And a pleasant good afternoon to everyone out there in Irish Breakdown land. It is Irish Breakdown After Dark. I am Vince D'Addario. I am the football analyst. What's that?
Again,
Yeah, I know. Seriously.
4 nights in a row we're doing late night shows, man.
I feel like we've done this before. It's like Groundhog Day. The only thing that changes is the wording at the bottom
I
here.
need a nap.
But I'm Vince. I'm the football analyst. That's Brian. He is the publisher at irishbreakdown.com. And we just saw the final, not the final, the final rankings where there's still games to be played.
Before the final.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's the final Tuesday rankings have just gone down. And we're going to talk about them, obviously. But before we get into it, Brian, I'm just going to give you the floor. Is there any news that you want to share with anybody about anything? We didn't talk about this beforehand, but I figured I'd throw it out there because people are going to ask.
No, we got a couple things on the message board, just a couple little tidbits, but not about who the next head coach is going to be. So,
yes.
Yeah.
But Balis is back, which I am ecstatic about. Whoever gets the head coaching job, at least that part's locked down. So I will say that I'm very happy.
And I'm going to be honest, I'm at my wit's end with ESPN. So as soon as I saw the final rankings, I turned it off. So I don't know what was said afterwards. I had the volume down pretty much the entire show because ESPN is worthless. I turned it up just long enough to hear them talking about how Michigan might get in if Ohio State might get in if Michigan and some other teams lose.
Basically, he said if everybody in front of him loses, Ohio State's going to get in.
Last I checked, Notre Dame's not playing this weekend.
Like it was the worst.
It's just such a clown show. Did you not watch the freaking game last week? They'd have the same record. No, Michigan would have another win. It's such a clown show.
It was unbelievable.
Such a clown show.
Man,
and it's like every dude in there. It's like, oh, gee, we're listening to a bunch of Ohio State graduates talking about how Ohio State might be in.
I know.
So whatever. But anyway, Notre Dame ranks 6th, right? They dropped behind one OSU, but are now ahead of another OSU.
That's true. They're blanketed by OSU.
I'm going to ask people in the chat, if you want to ask me about OSU, please tell me which one you're talking about. So I don't make the same mistake I did last week.
Write it out, maybe even. That would be different.
Right.
Yeah.
So look, and one thing people are going to talk about Oklahoma State, it doesn't matter. We said this the other day. It doesn't matter that Oklahoma State jumped ahead of Notre Dame, because if they didn't jump ahead of them this week, then we're going to jump ahead of them next week if they beat Baylor. And them being ahead of Notre Dame now doesn't matter if they lose to Baylor.
Right.
So at the end of the day, they needed Baylor to win no matter what, unless there's other chaos ahead of them, like Cincinnati losing or Michigan losing, something along those lines. So Notre Dame 6th. They were going to be 5 or 6, and
it was expected.
It really, I don't know if I expected it. I didn't really know what it was going to be honest with you. It just didn't matter. I didn't put a lot of thought into it because it didn't matter, because if Oklahoma State beat Baylor next weekend, they were going to jump them then anyway. So Notre Dame falls to 6. I don't think it helps that Notre Dame currently has no head coach.
Right.
I don't think that helps their current college football playoff rankings. What also hurt their college football playoff ranking was the fact that Wisconsin went from 15 to out, right? For losing to a Minnesota team that I believe finished the season 7-5, right? Or 8-4. What was Minnesota's record, Vince? Minnesota finished 8-4. Okay. Minnesota finished 8-4, and 2 of their losses were to – they lost to Iowa. They lost to Ohio State. Now, Wisconsin goes on the road at number 15. They go on the road, lose to an 8-4 team. They drop completely out of the rankings. Texas A&M goes on the road and loses to a 6-6 LSU team who's fired their coach a month ago. They have now lost their last 2 straight games against FBS opponents. They're 1-3 to end the season. Okay. Their only win was over Prairie View, and they're still ranked. They were in the 20s. They were behind Wisconsin. So according to this stupid committee, which we have complained about every week, Wisconsin drops over 10 spots out for losing to an 8-4 Minnesota team on the road. But LSU, who has now lost 2 straight games against FBS opponents, lost to a 6-6 LSU team, is now out or still in at 25, right? And they also lost to a 7-5 Mississippi State team. But, I guess that win over Bama is just, going to trump everything else, right? It's patently absurd. They are so playing the whole let's move teams around to make sure we get certain teams in. They're definitely playing up the Bama card, which is quite interesting.
They're playing Bama card hard. I mean, the whole Texas A&M thing is only to keep Bama
100%
where they are. Because
the only reason those two teams are in and Purdue is not is because with Ohio State out, there's no reason to keep Purdue in now because they don't want Notre Dame in. I mean, this is the first time I've ever said this. I don't think they want Notre Dame in. I will say this, however. I think the only reason they don't want Notre Dame in now is because they don't have a head coach. Sure. I would wonder what these rankings would have looked like if Brian Kelly didn't leave Notre Dame. I'm dead serious. I mean, it's a little conspiratorial, but we have said in the past, and in the final rankings, they will move teams around to benefit the 4 teams they want in the playoff. We've said that before. This is not new. So I'm wondering if that's something that hurt Notre Dame. But I'm a little fired up tonight. It's not even really about the rankings. It's just everything that's been going on the last 48 hours.
Look, there's a chance, okay? There's a chance that Notre Dame has a head coach by the time the Sunday rankings roll around.
Yeah, hope so.
I mean, there's a chance. So maybe it won't factor in. We don't know, okay? Yeah. And if I'm looking at this from an unbiased opinion, right, which is what we're supposed to do, frankly, I would have moved Cincinnati ahead of Alabama.
Sure.
And I don't think I would have gotten much flack for it because I think Cincinnati right now is playing better than Alabama, and Alabama should have lost that game. Now they didn't.
And Cincinnati has a better win than Alabama.
That is also very true. That's absolutely true. And so I would have bumped Cincinnati above Alabama, put Alabama 4. Then if they lose to Georgia, no matter what the score is, they're out. Right. Now that they're at 3, I mean,
this is still good for them to be out though if they lose because the fear that I had is they stayed at 2.
Right.
That was the concern, or jumped up to 2, and Michigan only moved up to 3.
If it goes chalk this Saturday, okay, so Georgia wins, Michigan wins, Cincinnati wins, Oklahoma State wins, okay. I think they're going to jump Oklahoma State over Cincinnati.
I don't.
I do.
I think if Bama loses this weekend, they're going to be out.
I understand that. I said Oklahoma State jumps over Cincinnati, takes Alabama's spot. Cincinnati stays.
I thought you were saying Bama stays and they leap Cincinnati.
No.
I get you.
No.
So you're saying Oklahoma State and Cincinnati both go in. You're saying they leave Cincinnati at 4
Correct.
And move up. I got you.
That's what I'm saying.
I could see that.
Well, because if you look at the resume,
problem with that, to be honest,
you look at the resume, they'll have 2, top wins, and Cincinnati has 1, right? So,
they'd have 3 top wins because they beat Oklahoma State. They beat Oklahoma and Baylor twice.
There you go. Yeah,
they'd have absolutely 3 top 15 wins.
Right, and I wouldn't have any problem with that being the case, right? But again, that's if everything goes chalk.
Although I do wonder, because the committee in the past has talked. There's sometimes the geographics can play a role in the whole thing, and do you want the Michigan Cincinnati matchup, and that because that's the other thing too is you need to try to find a sexy matchup, and I don't know if there's going to be one. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if there's going to be one.
If that top 4 is Georgia, Michigan, Oklahoma State, and Cincinnati, there's nothing sexy.
Part of me wonders if the committee's like, "Come on, Bama," or "Come on, Baylor." You know what I mean? Like if Georgia beats Alabama, it's kind of like, "Come on, Baylor," because you at least get Notre Dame in there if they have a coach by then. But
in theory,
it's a.
If you listen to anybody from from ESPN, Notre Dame basically needs everybody in front of them to lose in order to get in,
and Oklahoma State to disband football.
Right, that's basically what they said.
So they need everyone ridiculous. To have. They need Georgia and Alabama to lose this weekend, and not sure how that's going to be possible. They need Michigan to lose, Cincinnati to lose, Oklahoma State to lose, and Ohio State has to give up on the season. Right, that's about the only way that Notre Dame's going to get it.
Yes, that's right.
Now, according to ESPN, that's not what we think. So let's get back to serious time. As y'all can tell, I'm a little tired.
Well, it is.
But I think obviously at this point in time, the pathway for Notre Dame to me is still the same as it was.
I agree.
And that is you need Georgia to beat Bama and you need Oklahoma State to lose. Now here's the interesting one. If Michigan loses to number 13 Iowa in a close game, do they fall all the way out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I could see them sneaking them still in.
Right. I think Michigan would have a better 2-loss resume than Alabama, in my opinion.
And the thing is, if Michigan, and it's going to be a close game because Iowa's not going to blow anybody out. Okay, so if Michigan loses,
be shocked if that happened. Yeah,
if Michigan loses, it'll be close. It'll be like a 1-score game, something in that neighborhood, right? And if that's the case, maybe Michigan drops to 4, right? I mean, I could still very much see them in the Final Four if that's the case.
I don't know if I could say very much. I think part of it's going to depend on, does Notre Dame have a coach by then?
That's such terrible logic. Not for you.
No,
but I mean,
I know. See, I get it. So,
that.
I disagree with that, because they've also made this case in the past. They have said in the past, like, look, if your starting quarterback goes down and he's not going to be able for the playoff, you're not one of the 4 best teams anymore, right? Like,
well, what about Ohio State when that happened to them?
Well, that was a little bit of a different situation, because they had been playing with that. They had played with that guy, right? So Cardale Jones led them to a 59-0 win in the Big Ten championship. So he led them to, he came in and replaced JT, played in the rest of the Michigan game. They won that game. And then they went and beat Wisconsin 59-0. So they proved that they are still a top team with him at quarterback. What I'm referring to is, like, your quarterback goes down in the conference championship, right? Or if your team's does not like, so let's just say Trevor Lawrence was out last year, and DJ takes over and they have that really close win over BC and they lose to Notre Dame. Let's say there was nothing else after that for Clemson and he's out for the year. It's like, well, you're not the same team with Trevor Lawrence not in there. Well, then Trevor you see what I'm saying? So they have said that in the past. Ohio State proved that they were still a top 4 team with Cardale Jones a quarterback. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I come from. Now, if they would have struggled to beat Wisconsin, I don't think they jump TCU if they would have struggled with Wisconsin. But when you go out and you roll 59-0, it's like, okay, they're fine, right? And I think that's kind of the premise. So I do somewhat understand it. Go ahead, Vince.
Can we just put this to bed right here? Notre Dame is in a New Year's 6. Okay, yes. If they don't get into the college football playoff, they're the 6th ranked team in the country. Notre Dame's not dropping. The committee
chooses who's going to be part of that conversation.
Notre Dame's not dropping. If you're a top 6 team in the country, you're in a New Year's 6. So, right. Martin, relax, take a breath. They're going to be in a New Year's 6 if that's what you were hoping for. So, don't worry, relax. They're not headed to the Cheez-It Bowl. All right, it's okay.
Right. Hey, don't knock the Cheez-It Bowl, buddy.
Well, I love Cheez-Its.
That's my favorite non-New Year's 6 bowl.
Not like they're going to hand them out to us, though. I mean,
I bet you we get a little swag pack of
Cheez-Its. I'd like a Cheez-It bag. Can I get like a...
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome.
Okay, anyway.
Your kids would steal it anyway, so...
You're right, you're not wrong.
So, Vince, let's talk about the rest of the rankings real quick. So, I mean, obviously, we talked about Notre Dame needs... Now, here's with Cincinnati at 4, if they lose to Houston this weekend...
Out.
Now you... But out, but who jumps them, right? That's what I'm saying is like...
Yeah.
So, again, we're working with the premise that Bama loses. Okay, so, because if Bama wins and Oklahoma State wins, it doesn't matter what Cincinnati does in relation to Notre Dame, right? Because Oklahoma State's in and Bama's in, right? So what if Cincinnati loses? Does a 12-1 Cincinnati with a coach fall behind an 11-1 Notre Dame without a coach? I mean, there's all types of scenarios that Brian Kelly bailing on this program now brings up to the equation.
It honestly depends. So if just So
this is what makes this final weekend so interesting.
No. Absolutely. So Georgia wins, right? I feel like Alabama's out. So we got an opening at 3.
Mm-hmm.
If Cincinnati loses, now you've got an opening at 4. So now the discussion is, okay, Oklahoma State, you would assume would jump to 3 if they win, right? Because they're favored. We're going to assume that. Now you've got the open 4 spot. Does that go to Cincinnati or does that go to Notre Dame? Now, Cincinnati, do you not drop them for losing?
You drop them, but it's like, do you drop them behind Notre Dame? That's the question.
But there's nowhere else to go but behind Notre Dame.
So you said Georgia wins, right? Like,
so Georgia wins.
Right. So they're in. Back. Michigan's in.
Right.
Right.
So Alabama's out. So 3 is open. Right.
Cincinnati loses. I get you. This has been the debate we've had for 2 weeks now. We don't know how the committee's going to handle that because of the head-to-head. And because of the fact that, again, Notre Dame does – look, the whole thing for Notre Dame has changed now because Brian Kelly bailed, right? So we can't look at Notre Dame the way we did a week ago. That's the thing. And now you may not like it. I may, have a feeling about it one way or the other. All I'm saying to you, Vince, is this is what they've established. That they have said in the past that they look at your roster as what it is going into the postseason.
The roster's the same, though.
It's the coaching because the coach is part of it, right? I mean, that's
I mean, he is, but
if you take Nick Saban away from Alabama for the entire preparation,
are we comparing Nick Saban to Brian Kelly now?
So now you're saying a head coach only counts if it's Nick Saban. My point is, if you take Nick Saban away from Alabama, is Alabama the same program? If he can't, okay.
That program is not the same.
Okay, but you and I have a feeling about Notre Dame because we covered every single day. I'm trying to look at it from the committee's point of view. If you take away a head coach who's been your head coach for 5 straight teams that have won 10 plus games, see, for this conversation, we kind of got to get out of our emotions a little bit, right? Because you and I are both still kind of, like you turn the stove on and we immediately go to boil, right? I get it. I'm there. But I'm trying to look
pasta. I just boiled water.
I'm trying to look at this a little bit rationally and look at this from their point of view. You know what I mean? And from their point of view, Notre Dame just lost their head coach. Okay. Now you can't. I would even say if when I say they don't have they lost their head coach, I'm referring to, Vince, they don't have a head coach by then.
Okay.
If they've named Marcus Freeman as the next head coach, that's a different conversation for me.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm working with the impression that they don't have a head coach named by Sunday. And that's where I'm coming from. That's a different situation. You get what I'm saying?
I get what you're saying. I don't like it, but I get what you're saying.
You may not like it, but if the roles were reversed and it was another program, we don't cover every day and we know the head coach is overrated. I mean, if we're being honest, that's how we feel. So I'm trying to look at this rationally. If I'm the committee and Notre Dame doesn't even have a head coach, like you have to take that into consideration.
I know, but it's not Notre Dame's fault. He left.
Well, it is. I get that, but that's still part of the deal, right? It's not their fault, but that's what Brian Kelly left. And so I do want to bring this up, Vince. We do have a super chat related to this conversation. Could you go ahead and read that one?
Yup, Patrick. Thank you for the super chat. It says Barta really just said they are going to factor in that Kelly is not there after Saturday's games. I really hope that's not the reason they don't get in if games fall their way. I agree with you. If games fall the way they're supposed to and Notre Dame still doesn't get in, I'm going to be pretty hot about the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be really hot about it because you're punishing that entire program because someone left. I'll just say it that way, because he left.
Yes, try and keep it civil tonight.
I'm trying to keep it
civil until I have a certain comment I'm going to make here in a little bit. But
so I just that would suck, to be honest with you. I'll just say that would be not cool. But I mean, let's hope that the games fall their way so that we have that argument to make. Let's just put
that would be very interesting,
because still some things need to fall into place for Notre Dame. Okay,
that would be very. I really pray that we get to that point of the conversation. So we're going to find that out. Just a little quick super chat from our Cincinnati guy, Hunter. Thank you for joining us, Hunter. Because, guys, I'm at my wit's end. Notre Dame media is confident Freeman will be hired, and Cincinnati media is feeling fickle, is going to leave. At least we're still at 4, though. Here would be my question for you. Are they confident are they feeling he's going to leave because they're just kind of assuming based on what happened last time, or are they hearing something? That's something that I would be very, very curious to.
Right. Because I've seen multiple reports that they're working on an extension for Fickle. And from multiple people. Now, is that true? I don't know.
Oh, I'm sure they're working on an extension. It's just whether or not he's going to take it or not. I mean,
sure.
That's the conversation I would have. So I mean, we'll find out. But back to this, Vince.
Yep.
I want to get to a couple other super chats that are related to this. We'll get to some of the other super chats that are more related to the coaching stuff at the end. Yeah. Dan Muller says, before Oklahoma lost to Baylor, College Football Committee didn't have much respect for OU or the Big 12 at all. Why is it 100% Oklahoma State jumps ahead of Notre Dame if Oklahoma State wins out? Well,
because
number one, they've already jumped ahead.
Yeah,
but it's also just, Dan, looking at your overall resume, and I think they had less respect for Oklahoma than it necessarily was. And I don't think they love the Big 12 as a whole. But when you look at Oklahoma State, I mean, look, you talk about not loving the Big 12. They just dropped Baylor a spot despite winning.
Yeah.
You know, and
they sure did.
Ole Miss beat Mississippi State, and not very good team, 7-5, and they jumped them. I mean,
right.
They clearly don't have a ton of love for the Big 12, but Oklahoma State to me is a little bit of an anomaly because they have kind of convincingly won some good games. We've talked about this before, and there's the old question of, are you better off if you play like 4 ranked teams? You're better off to go 4-0 against your ranked teams to get upset by somebody not ranked, or to go 3-1 against your ranked teams where you lose to the best team on your schedule. Well, in Oklahoma State's case, I think it's better that they lost to an unranked team and have beat all the ranked teams, because at the end of the day, they'll have 3 wins over top 15 teams. The committee clearly doesn't love the Big 12, but it likes it enough.
But it is what it is. Notre Dame will have.
It likes them enough to have 3 top 15 wins, which is what will happen. And so, I mean, that's the thing you have to look at in this conversation is, yes, it's not great, but where's Notre Dame's wins? Because for everybody that has been giving me this bullcrap mantra, which I have been sick of for a month, about how this is Brian Kelly's best coaching job. He lost so much talent. They beat 0 ranked opponents this year. So who was the team on Notre Dame's schedule that they were supposed to lose to because they lost a quarterback and an offensive lineman? Because, they're the only team in the country that lost those players, right? That's what I'm trying to figure out, right? Is who was this great team that Notre Dame beat? And then ultimately, beside me wanting to throw a little shade on Brian Kelly, what you have to look at rationally is, what's Notre Dame's resume now? They beat a bunch of decent teams.
Right.
They have 0 wins over a top 25 team. Oklahoma State's going to have 3 wins over top 15 teams.
Right. They deserve to jump Notre Dame.
And clearly the committee's not in love with the Big Ten West now, because they dropped out all those Big Ten. Iowa or Minnesota was ranked at one point. Wisconsin was ranked at one point. And Purdue was ranked at one point. They're all out. All 8-4, all out. Bunch of 8-4 SEC West teams in there, but all the Big Ten West teams are out. Okay. So, which conference do you think they like the least? Well, clearly they like the Big Ten West the least. And that's just kind of where we are.
Yeah.
And that's where Notre Dame's resume was built on. It was 2 wins over a pair of 4-loss Big Ten West teams. That's Notre Dame's resume. Why? Because Brian Kelly did not get his football team ready to play against Cincinnati. Beat Cincinnati, and this show's 5 minutes long.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, guys, Notre Dame's still number 2. Their season's over with. Let's get ready for the matchup. I'm really curious. No, the show would be about who's going to be the 3 seed.
Right.
That's what the show would be about. Because Brian Kelly didn't get his team ready to play. Because what we have realized, based on the comments he made to Joel Klatt before the Wisconsin game, and based on the fact that he left Notre Dame and is talking about wanting to go somewhere where he can win a championship, Brian Kelly had convinced himself that Notre Dame wasn't a championship football team. And he didn't treat it like a championship football team. He did demand championship excellence, which is why they didn't freaking show up against Cincinnati on October 2nd.
Yep.
Simple as that. And once he kind of started feeling like he was ready to be out is when they started playing better, because he let the coaches coach at that point in time.
Right, because he actually lost interest and he allowed the coaches to coach because he didn't have interest anymore, which is the most ironic thing on the planet, by the way. And it worked out really well for Notre Dame. I mean, it just did. Look, Notre Dame is a victim of the fact that they weren't ready to play Cincinnati and that their schedule didn't pan out at all the way it looked in the preseason, and that's not their fault.
Look, to a degree, we didn't think some of the teams on the schedule were. I thought North Carolina was overrated. I still thought North Carolina would be like an 8-4 team that finished in the top 25. Yeah, I thought Wisconsin was overrated. I still thought they'd be a 4-loss team that finished in the top 25. That's what they ended up being, but then they fell out for some reason.
Right.
I thought USC would take a step back. I didn't think they'd be 4-7 bad. So I mean, some of it has been a little worse than you anticipated. I mean, but when you're trying to build your resume around Purdue and Wisconsin,
but you could have. It should have been. It should have been. They have 4 or 5 wins over top 25 teams.
At least 2. I mean, even just 2. Right. I mean. But look, that's the thing. Their schedule was not good. It hasn't been strong for years, if we're being honest about it. And they didn't handle their business the way they needed to. I mean, look, if you'd have come out and ran the offense against Wisconsin in Purdue at the beginning of the season that you ran in the second half of the season, maybe your 41-13 win over Wisconsin is legitimately a 41-13 win over Wisconsin. Maybe instead of beating Purdue 27-13, you pound Purdue even more, and then it's like, well, yeah, they don't have the strength of schedule, but look, man, look what they did to all those teams. Look what they did to Toledo. Look what they did to Florida State.
Yep.
There you go. So at that point in time, for me, I still say we shouldn't be having this conversation.
Absolutely.
Because they should have been ready to play against Cincinnati. Because I'll still contend, and I'm sorry, Hunter, Cincinnati is not a playoff team based on their talent and all this type of stuff or their schedule. They deserve to be in the college football playoff because they handled their business. And
they did what they needed
and it's
to
not
do.
their fault. It's like we say Notre Dame. It's not Cincinnati's fault that UCF was down and Memphis is down and a lot of teams are down in the AAC. That's just the reality of it, right? And they didn't get a chance to play Houston yet. So this weekend they may be able to prove me wrong and show, hey, you know what? They just went and pounded Houston. They, okay, maybe they are a top 5 team, right? I still just don't see it. I think they're a top 10 to 15 team right now. They're a little better than I thought they were going to be this year, but not by much. Still a team Notre Dame should have beat, right?
No question.
In game 5. So the whole we're young and inexperienced and all that other stuff. It was game 5.
Hey,
real game quick. 1 was game 2. It's game 5.
So the number 2 team in the country is Michigan, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many returning starts did they have on the offensive line?
23.
23. How many did Notre Dame have?
63.
Okay, just checking. I just wanted to.
Well, I want to remind people again of the numbers I had the other day. I believe Notre Dame started the season with their starting lineup being a 6th-year senior, 5 fifth-year seniors, 6 seniors, 7 juniors, 2 sophomores, and a freshman, I believe, off the top of my head is what it was. So it's real young. So I'm sorry. I'm just letting it all fly out tonight when it comes to that shade because it was a stupid narrative, to be honest with you.
Right.
And it was peddled by people that instead of, being objective and really challenging Brian Kelly the way they should have, they just rolled with the narratives that were created from the Goog. And I don't think Notre Dame is better for it. And to be honest with you.
I agree completely.
And this is how he repaid all those people by.
And now, and I've seen it in the chat, and they're absolutely right. Now he's the favorite son of ESPN.
Because of course,
SEC
folks. It's yes, absolutely right.
It's
like the whole now he's going to
to
have players as good as everybody else. That's such a slap in the face to the Notre Dame players.
That is ridiculous.
So
ridiculous.
Yeah,
and because the narrative that ESPN is pushing is that only dummies are good players. That's he doesn't have the restrictions anymore, so he's going to have all the good players. So apparently, only idiots are good at football. I mean, that's basically what they're saying, which is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Right. I'm sorry. This is, oh my God.
Yeah. So I forgot to shut the upstairs door.
No, you got a friend.
So Rita made her way down.
You have a friend.
She may start howling here in a second.
That's okay.
If she does, I have
children.
I have to mute and get her upstairs. So,
you want to go through some?
Let's get through some of these super chats. Yeah,
okay.
Vince. Let's do the college football playoff ones first.
Do you want me to scroll? I don't know which ones you grabbed and which ones you haven't yet.
I only did the first 2. I mean, I only skipped the one from Ryan Feeks.
Okay, let me find. I'll throw that one just so we don't lose it. Okay. Here we go. Ryan, thanks for the super chat, man. He says, Ryan, head coach. Tommy Rees, OC. Mike Elston, DC. Harry Heastand, O-line. Balis, strength. That would be a better staff next year. Oh, look, that would be a fantastic staff. Harry Heastand, I think, is done coaching. I think he's done. I don't see him coming back to coaching. The rest is an absolute possibility. And frankly, that would be my want, is exactly what you said right there. Again, I think Harry is not going to come back, but there's plenty of good offensive line coaches out there. So, we'll see what ends up happening there. But yes, I would be on board with everyone but Heastand. Now, of course, if he wants to come back, absolutely. And you know what else I would do? I would offer him an analyst job or some sort of consulting job or whatever. Get him on the payroll so that he is in the program working with whoever it happens to be, whoever the offensive line coach. And maybe the offensive line coach would take offense to that, but I'm hiring him as an analyst. That's what I would do. So there's that. Do you have a comment on this
offensive line coach that you hired with Heastand as the analyst? His name was Chris Watt, a teammate of Tommy Rees's.
Yeah, which I would be 100% on board with, by the way. So if you just replace
if Chris Watt came with if Chris Watt and Harry Heastand were a package deal, coach, analyst.
You want to see a party?
I don't know if I would bring Chris Watt back as just the O-line coach.
Okay.
Unless I knew that Harry was at least still in town. Because here's the thing, you don't technically have to hire Harry Heastand.
No, that's true.
You know what I mean?
He wasn't on the staff 2 years ago. Okay, or in 2020.
Right.
So
as long
that's
as
all.
he's still in town.
There it is. You did the one from Dan, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Scrolling. A lot of chatter today, which is awesome. There we go. Here's one. Sean Ward. If Baylor kills Oklahoma State, could they get in over Notre Dame? There would have to be more chaos than just that happening.
Well, not even that, Vince. I think just directly, would they get in over Notre Dame?
Oh, right. No, because they have 2 losses.
I don't. Yeah, like they would. They could maybe jump Ole Miss and Ohio State, but I don't think they would then jump Notre Dame either.
Remington Jeans, I'm going to go with. Thanks for the super chat. Brian, this is kind of for you. Well, I can answer it. Do you feel like Jack Swarbrick is trying to secure as many coordinator/assistant coaches that he can before making a head coach decision? I would substitute the word decision with announcement if this is the case.
If I have a hard time believing that he's going to fight to keep Matt Balis and Tommy Rees and Mike Elston and Marcus Freeman so he can bring in Luke Fickell.
Right.
And if I'm Luke Fickell, I don't want that.
No, absolutely not. If I'm going to Notre Dame as the head coach.
The only head coach that would take that is a coach that you don't want. Matt Campbell, somebody like that. Somebody who's willing to, if I'm Luke Fickell, I'm like, you want to hire me because I just led my team to a 12 back-to-back undefeated seasons. We've gone
my staff, or I pick
what
my
Cincinnati,
staff.
9-1 last year, right? So they're 19-1 the last 2 years. I'm bringing in my staff.
Absolutely.
So
no question. Yes.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. That would be, and if this is true, and this is obviously speculation on everybody's part, but if this is true, I'm replacing the word decision with announcement.
Right.
That, so I can just be like, look, here's what it is. We're announcing it all right now. Let's go. You know what I mean? And I think doing that, and here's what I will say. If that is the case, okay, and there's an announcement maybe tomorrow, maybe Thursday, whatever, and the announcement is head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, strength stat, like all of that, right? I think that alleviates any issues with the playoff committee.
Right. I want to respond to something real quick.
Please
live an easy life. I appreciate this. This isn't a super chat, but I appreciate this. But I want to address that. He says, Brian, it's been like this for years. No matter what Notre Dame does, it will never be good enough. Do you think Notre Dame needs to be in a conference? Let me make sure that we separate what the committee has done in the past and how ESPN has treated Notre Dame in the past. ESPN is always going to crap on Notre Dame unless it benefits them financially to make it. Meaning, if they get in the playoff, then they love on them, right? Until they get beat, and then they love to hate on them. That's what sells for ESPN, right?
Right, because when they're and
the E stands for entertainment, and they've become a TMZ essentially. The committee has always, until this season, and even up until this week, this is the first week that I think they've been unfair to Notre Dame. But even then, I somewhat understand it because, again, they don't have a head coach.
Right.
The committee has always been fair to Notre Dame. In 2015, Notre Dame was in until Notre Dame played themselves out with a loss. Notre Dame was in the top 4 in 2015 until they played terrible against Wake Forest, who stunk. They played bad against BC, who stunk. They beat a 3-win BC team by 3 points, right? They played themselves out. Even with a loss, Notre Dame was 4. In 2017, Notre Dame had a home loss. They climbed up all the way to number 3 in the rankings until they lost to Miami. They played themselves out. Last year, Notre Dame's last game of the season, they got curb stomped by Clemson to finish 10-1. They had 2 ranked wins the whole year. That's it. 2 wins over ranked teams, including a team that just beat the mess out of them that didn't have their starting quarterback and their 3 best defensive players. And the committee still put them in. Right. And so I don't think the committee has been unfair to Notre Dame. I think the committee's been very fair to Notre Dame, which is why I've always pushed back on the narrative that Notre Dame had to be undefeated, because the only way that I can accept that narrative is if I'm going to work with the assumption that the committee put Notre Dame in the top 4 only with the intention of dropping them for no reason whatsoever in 2015 and 2017. Right. And then last year, the committee had every reason in the world to drop Notre Dame out for an undefeated Cincinnati team, a 9-0 Cincinnati team. Let's not forget, Cincinnati finished last season 9-0, right? So if the committee wanted Notre Dame out or wanted to treat Notre Dame unfairly, we would have seen evidence of this.
Yep, absolutely.
And they haven't. Notre Dame has been in the top 4 with a loss 3 times. Now, they fell out twice because they lost 41-8 to Miami, played bad for 2 games against Wake Forest and Boston College, and then lost to Stanford, which gave them 2 losses. So I understand where you're coming from, and I appreciate it, but I don't think there's any. And then the counter that he can make is, well, the one year they made it in with a loss, they were in a conference. I get that, but they didn't win the conference championship. They went 10-1 and got blown out.
Right.
They had a loss.
Right.
So I don't think that it would help them. I think what would help them is handle your business.
Exactly.
Right. Brian Kelly, throughout his entire career, was rarely, if ever, handled his business when he needed to. Get your team ready to play against Boston College and Wake Forest. Should not be that hard when you've got a national championship to play for. Absolutely. I'm sorry. How about you not keep the defensive coordinator that pissed away a lead against Stanford with 30 seconds left? Right? That's on you. That's not the committee. Okay? Don't go blown out by Miami 41-8. You're the guy that didn't get your team ready to play. It's not Notre Dame holding you back. Right? It's not Notre Dame's fault that you lost 41-8 to a Miami team that lost to Pitt the next week. A little fired up.
Hey, and you should be. Dino Bambino 23.
Oh, I love that name.
I know it's a great name. That's why I still had to pull it. Thanks for the super chat, my man. We addressed this, I believe. If Bama loses to Georgia, does Baylor jump ND for the 4th spot if they went against Oklahoma State? That's way too high. They're not jumping 5 spots.
Right.
That's just too far.
I think I think in that scenario, I honestly think that Ohio State would get in over them. Because I don't think a win over Oklahoma State, which would then drop Oklahoma State, would necessarily be enough for them to jump all the way up over a 1-loss Notre Dame team. Honestly, I think in that situation, Dino, they'd leave Bama in over Baylor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of the 2 choices, absolutely.
Because Bama would still have more top 20. Right, and Bama would have 3 top 25 wins.
Yeah.
Right, because they have a win over top 10 Ole Miss. They have a win over 2 top 25 teams in Arkansas and Texas. No, they lost the 2. So they'd have 2 wins over top, and then they lost to Texas A&M.
They losses to a top 25 team and the number 1 team.
Right.
So depending on how far down.
And Baylor lost to an even worse team. Baylor lost to TCU, who had a losing record,
unranked. Yeah.
Right, and then lost to Oklahoma State. Right. By 10. So definitely have worse losses than Bama does.
Yeah, absolutely. Scott Gibbs. Thanks, Scott. He says, go Bama, go Baylor, go Houston.
That's the perfect inside straight right there. That's with the exception of Iowa beating Michigan. That's like that's almost like at that point in time, it wouldn't matter that
if Bama wins.
Go Bama?
Screwed.
Yeah, no, don't go Bama.
Go Georgia.
Yeah, I almost assumed he said the right thing. Yeah, no. Go Georgia, go Georgia. Baylor, go Houston.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
If Bama wins, you might call off the
dog.
Well,
if Bama wins, you need both of those other 2 things to happen, or you need Iowa to beat Michigan.
Right.
That's what you would need.
You need way more chaos to happen.
Go Georgia, go Baylor, go Houston.
That's
I'm going to see if Scott actually corrected that. I bet you he did, because we all have said things like, "Oh wait, did I really say that?" So yeah, you can go down to the next.
You're looking. I'm scrolling. Here we go. Brian Madsen. If Tommy does not work out, would Tom Herman be a viable option for OC under Freeman?
Tom Herman would not get through a background check at Notre Dame.
Okay. And there it is, folks.
Yep.
Demetrius Rex. Thanks, Demetrius. Jack Cohn is sitting back somewhere getting ready to announce that he's the next head coach, the true leader we need that'll lead us to a national championship.
I love that. I love that.
That's pretty good.
That's good. Demetrius, that makes up for your little comment you made in the last show. Okay. But I still love you.
Peter Torres saw Rees was already offered by LSU, and Kelly tried bringing Freeman with him. Just listen to the players and the recruits. Secure Freeman.
Well, he was offered by LSU, but he has also since he has also, I believe, since met with Jack Swarbrick.
Right.
With the intention of staying. I believe that Tommy Rees, and I don't know this for a fact, I've talked to a couple people. I believe Tommy would like to stay at Notre Dame.
I would believe that.
If it works.
I'm telling you, I think again, complete speculation on my part, but I feel like he got a taste of what it's like to be an offensive coordinator You know what I mean? And I feel like he wants to see what he can do.
Look, somebody's going to hire Tommy Rees as an offensive coordinator. If it's not LSU, it'll be somebody.
But if he goes to LSU, it's the same situation, right? I mean,
if I'm a head coach somewhere, I look at Notre Dame's offense the last 6 games and say, yeah, okay, they played against bad teams, but you know what? You look at it schematically. As a coach, you're going to look at it schematically and say, what would my players do in that against the teams that we play? And that's how you evaluate it. You don't necessarily say, well, they did it against bad teams and then just dismiss it. Right. You say, okay, would that work against some teams we've played? The things that I've said in the past is when so I want to try to differentiate again between 2019 and 2021. In 2019, Notre Dame didn't necessarily play great. They just out-talented some really bad teams, right? Outside of, now Chip Long did some things schematically that year that we liked. Remember getting Braden Lindsey involved, moving Chase Claypool around against Navy. But you could just kind of watch that Notre Dame team and say they just were out-talenting some really bad teams.
Yeah, they're fairly predictable.
This team is dominating bad teams, and they're doing it in a way that I believe, with all maybe one exception, offensive line, projects to better opponents. Right? I'm like, if you would have done this against Cincinnati, you're 12-0 right now. If you would have done this against Purdue, you win big. If you'd have done this against Toledo, you're a much better football team. And I think that's kind of how you have to, and that's how coaches will look at Tommy Rees's production this year and say, hey, and then they'll look at, look what he did. They lost Avery Davis, right? You have to take that into consideration. Right. They lost this, they lost that, and boy, they played pretty good football. So if Notre Dame doesn't want him and he doesn't want to go to Baton Rouge, somebody will. I would hope not. That's not a given.
If he goes to LSU, he may still have the same line coach.
If Tommy Rees stays as the OC and the new head coach gives him any say in the staff, I don't think it's a guarantee that he would get rid of Quinn. I would hope he would, but it'd be a guarantee.
I've heard, and I don't know how credible the source is, that Quinn was offered to go to LSU.
Yeah, I've heard that too, but I don't. I'm with you. I've heard that too, but I don't know how confident I am that it's definitely true, which is why I haven't talked about it a ton.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I've heard that too. I'm just not sure how comfortable I am really pushing that.
We got another super chat from So It Goes 76. Thank you for the super chat. He says, you choose 1, since he loses and he makes the playoff and wins a title, Fickell named head coach of Notre Dame, or 2, since he wins, Notre Dame does not make the playoff, Freeman named head coach.
I'd go with the latter because then Notre Dame can win a title within the next 2 years.
Yep. Boom. It's all 2, without any thinking whatsoever for me.
But see, here's the thing is if Notre Dame makes the playoff and wins the title and they still didn't hire whoever they had on staff, then I would just, I'm done.
Yeah. Tigers breakdown.
I'm out.
All right.
Go Tigers. I'd have to work and go Tigers. I would just every Brian Kelly press conference. I would always be the last person. I'd slip the 50 spot to whoever does the mics. Right? Hey man, here you go. Here's the 50 spot, and I would end every interview with Brian Kelly. Go Tigers, and just mic drop it, and just I'd have my TB gear on, Tiger breakdown.
It's great.
I don't look good in purple.
It's so gaudy, and the fact that his daughter and his wife are all wearing the gold and the purple, and Scott, you did not have to give us another super chat, by the way.
We would have looked for it. Yeah, it's appreciated,
obviously, but
it's appreciated.
We figured you meant Georgia, so thank you,
Scott. Because Scott's had some really good super chats in the past, and I was like, wait a minute, been there, done that, buddy. Like Tommy Guns the other day had one where he meant to say Iowa, but said somebody else. So it happens. Definitely happens.
So, what else do you got, Brian? Where are we at here? Do we want to talk more about the playoff? Because I think we kind of nailed where everything is at the moment. Now it's just
a couple things that I did want to quickly mention, Vince, is I was looking at these matchups for this weekend, and I do still believe that there are some games that could happen this weekend that impact where Notre Dame stands.
Okay.
Because, if Oregon smokes Utah in the rematch, which I don't see happening, but hey, let's go with it for a second. Utah 17, we just found out this week, it's not unfathomable for a team to go from 15 out of the top 25. Utah State 9-3 plays San Diego State in the conference championship for the Mountain West. Since San Diego State's 19, the committee, even though they're 11-1, the committee doesn't clearly love San Diego State because they're 19 and they just now jumped in the top 20. I think they would fall out. 10-2 App State plays Louisiana, who's now jumped in at number 24. App State's 10-2 for the Sun Belt Championship. If App State wins that game, that's another top 25 spot that opens up. If Cincinnati at number 4 beats number 21 Houston, that opens up a potential top 25 spot. And, I don't see Wake Forest falling out at 10-3, but if they get pounded, if Pitt, it's not unheard of. I don't think they would fall as much because Wisconsin had 4 losses. Those would be their third. But the point being is between the Friday game with Oregon and Utah, which is slim, but something to keep an eye on, with San Diego State playing Utah State, with App State playing Louisiana, and with Cincinnati playing Houston, if Notre Dame has a head coach because if Notre Dame doesn't have a head coach, I don't think there's any way that they put Notre Dame in. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Whether they should or shouldn't.
Sucks, but I think it's fair.
Whether they should or shouldn't. If we're trying to give honest analysis, whether they should or shouldn't, I don't think they will. But if Notre Dame has a head coach by then, and a couple of those upsets happen, I would imagine Wisconsin's one of the first teams to jump back in. Maybe Purdue jumps back into this conversation. So you could see a scenario in which if they want, because what have we always said? They'll move 15 to 25 around to fit their narrative. So if Bama loses, if Oklahoma State loses, or Cincinnati lose, there's things they could do to now all of a sudden finagle to make Notre Dame's resume better. And Purdue and Wisconsin would be right there chomping at the bit trying to jump in. And there's precedent to get a bunch of 4-loss teams from a Power 5 conference in there, right? So those are some of the games on the outside that I would scoreboard watch a little bit. And those will be games I talk about when I put my cheering guide out on Friday.
Right.
Yep. Hey, we're going to watch the big games, but for Notre Dame to ensure that they actually do, because here's the thing, if you're sitting there with 12-1 Cincinnati and 11-1 Notre Dame, let's say Houston beats Cincinnati. If Notre Dame is sitting there with no wins over a top 25 team, Cincinnati has a head-to-head win and a win over the number 5 team, you still have to go with Cincinnati.
Right.
Notre Dame would at least need a top 25 win to be able to even remotely justify having a resume that could go in over Cincinnati. So now you're looking at it where you need Bama to lose, you need Oak State to lose, and you're going to need Notre Dame to get some help. So there is still room. Just because Wisconsin and Purdue aren't in the top 25 now doesn't guarantee that they can't get into the top 25 because of some of those non-Power 5 conference championships. So keep your eye out on some of those games as well. Yeah,
it's going to be real interesting, and we haven't exactly decided how we're going to do it, but we are going to have a show on Saturday, and where we will go over
the post
pretty much everything that has gone down and what is currently going down.
Yeah. And by the time we do the show, the only games that won't have been finished are the Big Ten and the ACC championship. So we'll have an idea at that point in time if Notre Dame's really got a shot. And if we're sitting there waiting, hoping that Iowa can beat Michigan, then it's going to be a rough night.
It's going to be a rough night, but it's definitely possible, right? I mean, that's what, and that's the problem with when you don't control your own destiny. You've got to hope other teams play better than you did, right? And I hate being in that. I hate not controlling my own destiny, whether it's in my actual life or whether it's a team that I cheer for or cover or whatever. It stinks. It absolutely stinks. So, but that's where Notre Dame is right now, and that's the fate that they have, and they don't have a head coach right now. Hopefully, they will by Sunday. And we'll see what happens. But I focused on the top 10 when we were looking at the rankings, and Brian makes a really good point. You have to also focus on all 25 because the committee, after the top 10, the committee will move teams around just to fit what they want. And that is so true because we've seen it so many years, year in and year out. So if they want to move Notre Dame into the top 4, guess what? Wisconsin and Purdue will be in the top 25. Just watch. That's going to happen, right? I mean, it's going to be – then they'll be like, well, Notre Dame had 2 top 25 wins. I mean, look at it. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
Looks like there's a super chat that got kind of covered up. And that happened last night, too.
What do you mean?
Around the 8:10 mark between Amacat and Michael O'Brien. Do you see that little green thing there? And I can't figure out a way to click on it. So
there was a blockage. I blocked somebody.
Gotcha. But I also see below that a green, like a super chat thing.
You got
below
Tommy Guns. Do you see his? Maybe that's what it is.
Is that what it was? So it's just not okay.
So
it's just not showing up on mine. That's what it is.
It might be Tommy, but Tommy, thanks for the super chat. He says, "I hope Tommy
is that right in between Amicat and Michael O'Brien's Go Iowa and Georgia winning it all thing?
Ours come in a little bit differently sometimes. I'm between Rick Doyle and Michael Espinoza.
Okay,
so, I mean it's right in that neighborhood. Okay. You see what I'm saying?
Yep, I got.
Sometimes ours come in a little out of order. We had an issue with that before.
I don't see that one from Tommy, so that must be it. So
I was like, what are you talking about? All right. Anyway, Tommy, thank you, man. He says, I hope Tommy wants to get out of Big Bird's shadow and wants to spread his wings and soar with this offense. Thanks for the shout out on my screw up.
Hey, no worries, man. We all do it, right?
Yeah, that's right.
There's been times I've been editing the podcast. I'm like, did I seriously just say that? Did I seriously just like, well, it's too late now. Like, part of me wants to like record just like the right word, like Iowa, and then put it in there. But it's like, nah, it'd be lame. Just own it. Just own it.
Just own it, man.
Just own it.
It is what it is. But thanks, Tommy. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yes, it's going to be very interesting. And yeah, we will have. So tomorrow, you want to talk about what we're doing tomorrow, or do we know what we're doing tomorrow?
We don't know yet.
Okay, fair enough.
This whole thing has kind of shook it up a little bit.
Yeah,
I have a feeling of what I want to do tomorrow.
Okay.
And it's going to be about the topic of we won't get into it, but I want to talk to you first to make sure you're comfortable with it. But I can tell you this, it's going to be a real good show tomorrow.
Oh, beautiful.
It's going to be a real intense show tomorrow.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I would highly recommend those of you who have not seen it yet, get on Twitter, get on Notre Dame's football Twitter, and check out the speech that Matt Balis gave to his guys. And that occurred today. And it was awesome. It was freaking like I was ready to I was fired up after listening to it. So everybody, I highly suggest you take a look at that because it was pretty darn cool.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll be my parting shot on this one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's going to be it for today's show. So, Vince, you want to take us out of here? Do we have? Is there any more questions down there about this? But I mean, there's not a whole lot to talk about. We're gonna, and part of the reason we're not going to dive too much into it is because we are going to jump more into the matchups and games on Thursday or Friday about who needs to win and all those kind of things. Because there's a lot still that can happen, and it's not just the three ahead, like Vince said. It's not just the games of teams ranked ahead of Notre Dame. It's also the ones from behind. So, and then of course, hey, y'all, we'll have a mailbag on Friday. I'm assuming we'll know a lot more about everything going on by then. So
I hope.
What I would encourage you to do is if you want to throw super chats in about the coaching thing in a podcast, it's not necessarily about that. You can, we'll answer it. Yeah. You can also wait till Friday, and then we'll have, because my thing is we'll have a lot more knowledge by then.
Absolutely.
And then you may be able to save your money. Right?
Hopefully I'll be taking some more days off of school.
Or instead of spending $4.99 on a super chat, spend $4.99 to buy a monthly membership to Irish Breakdown at board.irishbreakdown.com because there's some scoop on there that I put in there that is only for that board. And of course, a lot of conversation. And you can always ask me those questions outside of the time constraints of the show. So
Brian,
just wanted to throw that out there.
Not you, Brian. Brian with an I here. Brian Barry says, how do we find Balis' speech? So on Twitter.
I'm going to pull it up. No, we'll just play it right now.
Oh, yeah, I love it.
Just play it right now.
Technology is beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
I finally figured it out. Let me just find it here. So if you want to just go ahead and
you got to turn your volume up because he's got that raspy voice. Sometimes.
Yeah, and I'll try to make sure that I can hear it. But yeah, I'm gonna try to pull this up and it's
glorious.
Get it a little bigger. But let me just share this now. Okay, here we go. Share screen. I got to get the sound out because remember we learned that the hard way. Okay. So let me get some zoom action here.
Well, you can just make it full screen.
I did. I can't do that.
No,
okay, there we go.
In the corner. There you go.
Can y'all hear it?
Yeah.
For me and our family, we want to be at Notre Dame. That's what we want. That's who you guys are. That's who I always wanted to be. You're who I look up to. So for me to be able to have an opportunity here is a blessing. To be able to stay here is a huge blessing. Right now, for you guys, the most important thing is you got to move forward and do what you were meant to do, which is finish this season off the right way. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. An angry team is a very dangerous team. Okay, so a lot of you guys are a little bit angry right now. That's okay. That's good. You can utilize it. It's not good all the time. The most powerful motivator as well. But right now you're angry, and so you're going to use that anger, and that's a good thing. That's okay. But an angry team that cares about each other, loves each other, and decides no matter what happens, we're going to get it done what we started. You're going to destroy any opponent that you go against. I'm just telling you. Whether it's in the college football playoff, whether it's the New Year's Six Bowl, it doesn't matter who it is. This team, we're going to destroy the opponent. I am telling you right now, I can look in my eyes and I can see it. So that's what you got to focus on. Blessed, like I said, that I get to still be a part of this and be with you guys. And this is where I want to be. I want to die here. If I can die coaching you guys in here for the rest of my life, this is where I want to be. I know it's but it's the truth. Okay, I'm just being honest with you. So that's what we're doing. We're going to keep moving forward, keep getting better. Everybody good with that? Yes, sir. Any questions? Anybody on anything? Everybody's good?
I want to die here. I want to coach you guys until I die. Like, beautiful. Yeah, I mean, that look, outside of them naming a head coach, that made my night. That Balis is going to be back because he is a huge part of the 2017 and beyond turnaround for Notre Dame. So I'm fired up, man. Like that was all. Like as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I gotta send this to Brian. This is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so it appears because he says he wants to die in that building, which is it was a great speech about an angry team is a dangerous team and whoever they're gonna face, they're gonna destroy. I'm like, yeah. All right, let's go. It was fantastic. So it appears as though that he is going to stick around, which is fantastic. And he was also basically offered a blank check to go to LSU. And he said, I want to die at Notre Dame. Like, what a great response, by the way. To go to the media people and be like, hey, record this, right? We're putting it out on social media. Like, that was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That was awesome.
Yeah. So, well, that's Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame put that out, right?
They did. Yeah. No, they absolutely did. But the fact that he obviously had to approve it. You know what I mean? Right. But like to put it out there that he's not going anywhere, like, man, that's some stones. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it says a lot. And what are they angry about? Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because I always say, hey, coach leaves, it's a business. You don't be angry. It's just a business. There's something that they're angry about.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, hey, listen, just so y'all know, tonight I'm actually jumping on with some LSU folks tonight. So at 8:30, so in about 9 minutes, I'm jumping on with Tiger Bait. They're going to ask me my opinion about Brian Kelly.
Oh, boy.
And then I'm also jumping on a show at 8:50.
Is it internet, or is it radio?
I believe they're streams.
Okay.
So I'm going to retweet the things that they sent. And if you guys want to join because I'm going to be respectful. I'm not going to hammer them quite as much, but I'm going to be honest in my opinions, good and bad, positives and negatives.
Absolutely. Because look,
Brian Kelly,
I will say this again, and people love when I get fired up. But Brian Kelly brought this program to where they are now, right. And I will be forever grateful to him as a fan of Notre Dame that he did that. There's no question about it, no question. So there's plenty of nice things to say about him,
right?
You know what I mean? So. Yeah, I'm interested to see how you.
So I just retweeted both of them. Vince, could you do me a favor and take those links and put them on the message board? Because I'm getting ready to get onto this show with this guy.
Yeah,
so
I will do that.
So if you're on the message board, we'll have them. Vince is also going to put them on to. Actually, could you just put them into this chat?
Oh.
And then. Just put them on the message board, and then if you're on Twitter, I just retweeted them out. So look for
that's
them on Twitter.
That's where I'm at right now. Yeah. So I'm
anyway,
bro.
Thanks everybody. Appreciate y'all so much. It's been a wild week. I can't believe it's only Tuesday night. Like I feel like it's Friday. But we're not going away, right? No days off this week, right? Okay, we're going to be here tomorrow. We're going to be here on Thursday. We're going to be here on Friday. Who knows? We may have some breaking news. I don't know. And at some point in time, it'll be a lot of fun. But we're going to find out. So anyway, appreciate y'all very much. Have a great rest of your day. And we'll talk to y'all again very, very soon.